You wake up thinking about money. You go to sleep thinking about money. And yet, deep down, you're afraid of what you'll become when it finally arrives. Because you've seen what happens to those who get everything they always wanted and then lose their soul in the process. I am Solomon, the man who possessed more wealth than anyone in human history. And I can tell you a truth that will make you uncomfortable. Gold doesn't corrupt anyone. It simply reveals who you always were inside. You want to know how to get rich? The real question is, do you want to know how to get rich and still be someone you respect when you look in the mirror? Because there's a brutal difference between having money and being worthy of it. Today, I'm going to teach you the 7 virtues that allowed me to build an empire without losing my essence. These aren't business strategies. They're walls against self-destruction. They're the only things left standing when success tries to knock you down. The first virtue is the hardest to swallow: the truth about your own intentions. Because most people don't want wealth. They want to disguise insecurity. And when you build wealth on top of a lie about yourself, it collapses, taking everything with it. This isn't another video about empty motivation. It's about the deepest transformation that exists. Discovering who you need to become inside so that prosperity doesn't become your ruin. If you're tired of dreaming small, if you're ready for real change, subscribe to this channel now. Because what I'm about to share in the next few minutes could forever change how you see wealth, power, and purpose. The question that won't leave you alone is, do you rule the gold or does it rule you? Let's find out together. Number 1. The virtue of truth-facing self. Deception before seeking riches. Have you ever asked yourself how many times a day you lie to yourself? I'm not talking about obvious lies. I'm talking about that intimate conversation you have with yourself when no one's watching. When you say you want money to be free, but you really want money to get revenge on those who doubted you. When you claim you seek prosperity to serve, but the truth is you want prosperity to be served. I was the richest man who ever lived on the face of the earth, and I can tell you something that will make you uncomfortable. Before I conquered my first treasure, I had to conquer my first truth. The truth about myself, and that was the hardest battle I ever fought. In the beginning of my journey, I lied to myself every day. I said I sought wisdom when I really sought respect. I claimed I wanted to serve my people, when secretly I wanted my people to worship me. I pretended humility while feeding a pride that grew like weeds in my heart. Imagine a man building a house on quicksand, convinced he's building on solid rock. No matter how beautiful the structure, no matter how strong the walls appear, when the storm comes, everything will collapse. That's what happens when you seek wealth without facing your true motivations. There was a merchant in my kingdom who possessed enough gold to buy entire cities. He built palaces, accumulated treasures, had power over multitudes. But there was a truth he never wanted to face. He wasn't seeking wealth. He was seeking approval from the father who abandoned him as a child. And the richer he became, the emptier he felt, because money never fills a hole in the soul. One day, he lost everything in a single impulsive decision, trying to impress men he didn't even respect. The lie he told himself became his ruin. Self-deception is the cancer of prosperity, because when you don't know your true motivations, you become enslaved by them. And a slave can never be truly rich, even if he has mountains of gold. He will always be controlled by what he denies within himself. The first victory for anyone who wants to get rich isn't in the market, isn't in business, isn't in strategies. It's against self-deception. It's looking in the mirror of the soul and recognizing the hidden impulses that drive your decisions. It's asking yourself, why do I really want this wealth? And having the courage to hear the true answer, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. When I finally stopped lying to myself, when I recognized that my search for wisdom was contaminated by a thirst for admiration, something extraordinary happened. It wasn't easy. It was like pulling out a thorn that had been buried in the flesh for years. But when the truth emerged, a different kind of strength was born in me. Inner truth is the foundation for building solid wealth. Because when you know exactly why you're seeking prosperity, when your motivations are clean and your intentions are clear, you make decisions with surgical precision. You're no longer driven by neediness disguised as ambition. You're driven by real purpose. If you want to truly get rich, start by asking yourself a brutal question. What wound are you trying to heal with money? What approval are you seeking? What revenge are you planning? And after identifying that truth, face it, heal it, transform it. Because those who seek money to prove themselves will end up enslaved by their own pride. And pride is the deepest hole that exists. It never fills up. It only gets hungrier. True wealth only comes to those who have the courage to be true to themselves first. Number 2, the virtue of silence wealth loves those who build in secret. You post your victories before you've even harvested the fruits. You announce your projects before they're born. You display your strategies like trophies. And then you wonder why your opportunities turn into obstacles and your plans crumble before they're complete. There's a principle that few men know, and even fewer have the courage to apply. True wealth loves silence. It multiplies in quietude and flees from noise. It's like a rare plant that only blooms in the shade and dies under spotlights. During my reign, I made alliances that changed the course of history. I established trade routes that brought unimaginable riches to my kingdom. I built relationships that lasted generations. And almost none of these achievements happened under the public eye. They were born in silent rooms, in discreet conversations, far from the chatter of crowds. When you expose your plans before their time, you're not sharing, you're sabotaging yourself. Because every idea has a gestation period. Every project has a moment of vulnerability. And when you pull a seed from the ground to show how it's growing, you kill the growth. Think of a goldsmith crafting a precious jewel. He doesn't work in the public square, surrounded by curious onlookers and opinions. He works in his workshop, in silence, with total concentration. Each hammer blow is calculated. Each movement is precise. And only when the work is finished, only when perfection is achieved, does he reveal it to the world. I knew a young merchant who had brilliant ideas and infinite energy, but he had a fatal flaw. He couldn't keep secrets, not even his own. With each new opportunity he discovered, he ran to tell everyone he knew. With each strategy he developed, he made sure to explain the details to anyone who would listen. Within a few years, he saw his best ideas being executed by others, while he was always one step behind, always trying to catch up to those who should have been following him. Showing off is the language of the insecure. When you need others to see your progress to feel validated, you've given away your power. You've become dependent on external applause to maintain your internal motivation, and that's a subtle but lethal form of slavery. Silence protects more than stone walls. It protects your ideas from contamination by premature opinions. It protects your projects from sabotage by the envious. It protects your energy from the dispersion that comes with the need to constantly explain and justify your choices. But there's an even deeper dimension of silence that few understand. It's intimacy with the Creator. It was in the quiet hours, in moments of silent prayer, that I received the most powerful strategies for building wealth. It was in the silence of dawn that I understood the principles that govern prosperity. God whispers, He doesn't shout, and those who live making noise about their plans can't hear the guidance that comes from above. The multiplication of gold begins in intimacy with the eternal and ends in the discretion of great business. When you stop announcing and start building, when you trade exposure for execution, something magical happens. Your energy stops dispersing and starts concentrating. Your ideas stop being vulnerable and start maturing. Your projects stop attracting premature competitors and start attracting genuine partners. Silence isn't passivity, it's strategy. It's not fear, it's wisdom. It's not weakness, it's concentrated power. If you want to build real wealth, learn to work in secret. Stop seeking external validation for every step you take. Stop turning your plans into spectacle. Build in quietude. strengthen in silence, and reveal only when victory is complete. Because wealth born in silence has deeper roots and more lasting fruits. Number 3, the virtue of disciplined self-control as the key to wealth's longevity. You get what you always wanted, and then discover you can't control what you got. The money that was supposed to free you becomes your master. The success that was supposed to strengthen you becomes your weakness. And you realize, too late, that conquering wealth is easy compared to preserving it. Discipline is the difference between a king and a rich slave, between a prosperous man and a man possessed by prosperity. It's the invisible wall that protects your treasures from your own destructive impulses. A man without discipline is like a city without walls. No matter how rich it is inside, no matter how beautiful it appears outside, it's vulnerable to any attack. Enemies don't need armies to conquer it. They just need to find a breach in the defense. And when it comes to wealth, the greatest enemy doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. During my years of reign, I saw powerful kings fall not from lost wars, but from battles not fought against themselves. I saw men who dominated entire nations be dominated by their own desires. I saw fortunes built over decades, destroyed in days, not by external crises, but by lack of internal control. The downfall of many rich men begins with a simple word they forgot how to pronounce. No. No to the excess that disguises itself as reward. No to the indulgence that presents itself as earned right. No to the pleasures that promise to satisfy but only leave you hungrier. I knew a merchant who built an empire from nothing. He had vision, he had strategy, he had the ability to transform ideas into gold. But when wealth arrived, he lost the ability to deny himself anything. Every desire became a necessity. Every whim became a priority. Within a few years, he was spending more than he earned, committing beyond his possibilities, and making decisions driven by emotion instead of reason. He died poor, not because he didn't know how to make money, but because he didn't know how to govern himself. Discipline isn't rigidity. It's not a prison you build for yourself. It's self-governance. It's the ability to consciously choose between what you want now and what you really need for the future. It's the strength to say no to impulse and yes to purpose. When you have money but no discipline, money possesses you. It dictates your choices, controls your schedule, defines your relationships. You become enslaved by what should serve you. And golden slavery is still slavery. But there's a secret about discipline that few know. It's not sacrifice, it's protection. Every no you say to a temptation is a yes you say to your freedom. Every impulse you control is a victory you win over the forces that want to destroy you. True discipline begins with small daily decisions. Get up at the set time, even when the bed is comfortable. Eat what strengthens the body, even when desires ask for what weakens it. Invest what multiplies the future, even when the present asks for spending. These are small battles that decide great wars. I learned that discipline is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. And the stronger it gets, the heavier the temptations it can carry without breaking. Start disciplining small things, and you'll discover you have the strength to govern great things. Wealth without discipline is like water in your hands. No matter how much you have, it always slips through your fingers. But discipline transforms your hands into cups. And well-molded cups can contain oceans. If you want your prosperity to be lasting, if you want your success to be sustainable, learn to govern yourself before trying to govern anything else. Because those who can't control themselves will be controlled by everything and everyone. Discipline is the key that opens the door to true wealth, but it's also the lock that protects it from the internal thieves who want to plunder it. Those who govern themselves govern their fortune. Those who don't govern themselves are governed by it. Number 4, the virtue of generosity, the divine mathematics of prosperity. You guard every coin as if it were the last. You calculate every expense as if you were on the brink of bankruptcy. You hold back every opportunity to give as if it were a lost investment. And then you wonder why your wealth grows so slowly, why your blessings seem limited, why prosperity flows to others while it only trickles to you. There's a spiritual law that defies all human logic. The more you give, the more you receive. I'm not talking about calculated charity or self-interested generosity. I'm talking about something much deeper and more powerful. I'm talking about the divine mathematics of prosperity. I built the greatest temple the earth has ever seen. I raised its walls with pure gold, adorned its courtyards with the most precious stones in the world. It was a work that consumed unimaginable treasures. But I can tell you something that will surprise you. What brought the most prosperity to me and my kingdom weren't the riches I accumulated for the temple. They were the acts of silent generosity I practiced far from human eyes. True generosity isn't an expense, it's an investment. It's not a loss, it's a sowing, but it must be done with the right intention and a clean heart. Because there's a fundamental difference between giving to impress and giving to bless. Imagine a farmer who looks at his seeds and thinks, if I plant these seeds, I'll lose them forever. It's better to keep them in the barn to make sure I always have seeds. That farmer will starve surrounded by seeds that never germinated, because stored seeds rot, planted seeds multiply. There was a rich merchant in my kingdom who measured every penny before spending it. He accumulated treasures, but lived tormented by the possibility of losing everything. He never helped a widow, never rescued an orphan, never extended his hand to those in need. He kept everything out of fear of having nothing. And you know what happened? Exactly what he feared. He lost everything in a series of disasters that seemed to be drawn to his life. He died poor and alone, surrounded only by regrets. But I also knew a young man who had little but gave much. Every time he prospered a little, he found someone who needed more than he did. He didn't make a show of it, didn't seek recognition. He simply gave, with joy, and without calculating the return. And it was impressive to observe how opportunities multiplied in his life, how doors opened, how blessings came from unexpected directions. Intentional generosity, that which is born from a grateful heart and not from a calculated strategy, activates a spiritual logic that transcends the laws of the material world. When you give without expectation of return, you trigger a force that makes the universe conspire in your favor. But beware of false generosity, that which gives to be seen, which helps to be praised, which invests in charity like it would invest in marketing. This generosity doesn't touch God's heart and doesn't move spiritual laws. It's just business disguised as goodness. True generosity begins with gratitude. When you recognize that everything you have came from above, that every blessing is an undeserved gift, your perspective changes. You stop being an owner and become a steward, and a good steward knows he must make money circulate, must make blessings flow. Giving with wisdom doesn't mean giving without criteria. It means carefully choosing where your generosity can generate the most transformation. It means identifying genuine needs and meeting them in ways that strengthen, not weaken, those who receive. When I began practicing intentional generosity, something extraordinary happened. Not only did my wealth increase, but my capacity to generate wealth multiplied. It was as if new channels of prosperity constantly opened, as if new ideas, new opportunities, new alliances appeared out of nowhere. Generosity breaks the cycle of scarcity. When you live in fear of losing, you attract loss. When you live with joy in giving, you attract abundance. It's a law as real as gravity, but infinitely more powerful. If you want to truly prosper, stop holding everything with clenched fists. Open your hands, open your heart, open your resources. Find ways to be a blessing in others' lives. And watch how heaven moves to be a blessing in your life. Because giving is the smartest way to receive, and generosity is the investment that never loses. Number 5, the virtue of listening, the hidden power of hearing before acting. You talk more than you listen. You teach more than you learn. You explain more than you understand. And then you're surprised when your strategies fail, when your businesses stumble, when opportunities slip through your fingers like sand. The truth no one wants to admit is that you're losing fortunes by not knowing when to close your mouth and open your ears. Listening is the most valuable asset a man can develop, more important than capital, more powerful than connections, more strategic than technical knowledge, because those who listen understand. Those who understand anticipate, and those who anticipate dominate. During my reign, I made decisions that changed the destiny of entire nations. I avoided wars that would have cost thousands of lives and millions in treasures. I discovered trade opportunities that brought prosperity for generations. And almost all these victories were born not from what I said, but from what I heard. I listened to my advisors when they whispered truths they preferred not to shout. I listened to my people when they shared their needs and dreams. I even listened to my enemies, because in their words, I found their weaknesses and hidden intentions. Listening saved me from disasters and taught me paths to prosperity I would never have discovered alone. But we live in an age of constant noise. Everyone wants to talk, no one wants to listen. Everyone wants to teach, no one wants to learn. Everyone wants to express themselves, no one wants to understand. And this modern rush to always have something to say is costing fortunes and destroying opportunities. Think of a skilled negotiator. He doesn't dominate the table by talking, he dominates by listening. While the other reveals their needs, their pressures, their limits, he absorbs every piece of information like a sponge. And when he finally opens his mouth, he says exactly what needs to be said to close the best possible deal. I knew a young merchant who had the gift of words. He could convince anyone about anything, but he had a fatal flaw. He couldn't stay quiet long enough to really understand what people wanted. In his negotiations, he talked so much that he ended up revealing his own secrets and losing precious advantages. He spent years losing money not from lack of talent, but from excess of talk. Listening is an invisible asset that transforms hidden opportunities into tangible gold. When you truly listen, you catch nuances that go unnoticed by those busy formulating responses. You identify problems no one is solving. You discover desires no one is fulfilling. There's an abyssal difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive. Listening is active. Hearing is receiving sounds. Listening is understanding meanings. Anyone can hear. Listening is a skill few master. When you truly listen, you're not just processing words. You're reading between lines, catching emotions, identifying hidden motivations. You're collecting precious information that others let pass unnoticed. But the most powerful listening isn't just human listening, it's spiritual listening. In moments of silence, when I stopped trying to solve everything with my own wisdom, I heard whispers that came from a higher source, guidance that led me to paths my limited mind would never have considered. The rush to always have a ready answer, to always appear intelligent, to always demonstrate knowledge, is the enemy of true wisdom, because wisdom isn't in having all the answers. Wisdom is in asking the right questions and having patience to hear complete answers. When you develop the virtue of listening, something impressive happens. People begin to trust you more because they feel truly heard. Business flows better because you understand exactly what each party needs. Opportunities multiply because you're tuned into needs others don't even perceive. If you want to truly get rich, learn to listen more than you speak. Develop the patience to hear complete answers before formulating new questions. Cultivate the humility to recognize that there's much more wisdom around you than within you. Because those who listen harvest information. Those who harvest information make better decisions. And those who make better decisions build more solid wealth. Listening is the silent superpower of prosperous men. Number 6. The virtue of purpose money. Obeys those who have direction. You chase money like a hungry dog chases any bone. Without direction, without criteria, without knowing where you're going or why you're running. And then you wonder why you feel exhausted even when you win, why you feel empty even when you accumulate, why prosperity seems more like a burden than a blessing. Money is like water. It flows where it finds a defined bed and disperses where there's no clear direction. Without purpose, wealth becomes a weight. With purpose, it becomes a force. During my years of government, I had to make a decision that would define not only my destiny, but the destiny of future generations. I could use all my wealth to build palaces that glorified my name, or I could direct it to build something that glorified the Creator and served my people. The difference between these two choices wasn't in the amount of resources I had, but in the clarity of purpose that guided me. Without purpose, money becomes a burden, because when you don't know why you're getting rich, any path seems valid. And when any path seems valid, you exhaust yourself trying to follow all of them at the same time. It's like a traveler who leaves home without a destination. He can walk for days and never arrive anywhere. Imagine a river without banks. It doesn't flow. It spreads. It has no force, only volume. It doesn't reach the sea. It just wets the surrounding earth. But when you build solid banks, when you define a clear course, that same volume of water becomes a force capable of moving mountains and generating energy. I knew a man who inherited a considerable fortune from his father. He had enough resources to do anything he desired, but he didn't know what he desired. He spent years jumping from project to project, from investment to investment, always seeking something he couldn't define. In the end, he wasted the entire inheritance, not from lack of money, but from lack of direction. He died without having built anything significant, without having left any legacy, without having found lasting satisfaction. Divine wealth is granted to those who know exactly why they desire it, not to feed the ego, not to impress others, not to fill emotional voids, but to fulfill a mission that transcends personal interests. When you have a clear purpose, your financial decisions become simple. You know where to invest and where not to invest. You know when to spend and when to save. You know when to risk and when to be conservative. Because you have a superior criterion that governs all your choices. Purpose is like a compass. There may be storms, there may be confusion, there may be moments of disorientation, but the needle always points in the same direction. And this consistency of direction is what transforms scattered effort into concentrated progress. But beware of false purposes, those born from ego disguised as mission, those that promise to serve others but actually serve only personal vanity. True purpose always puts something greater than yourself at the center. It always seeks to build something that will last longer than your life. I used my wealth to edify, to build, to elevate something greater than myself. And for this reason, God continued entrusting more resources to my hands, because He knew I wouldn't use them to destroy myself, but to build something eternal. When you find your true purpose, something extraordinary happens. Money stops being an end and becomes a means. Prosperity stops being a goal and becomes a tool. And when that happens, you discover you can generate wealth with an ease that previously seemed impossible. Purpose attracts resources. Clear mission magnetizes opportunities. Defined meaning aligns forces that were dispersed. It's as if the universe conspired to help those who know exactly where they're going. If you want your wealth to be lasting and meaningful, stop chasing money for its own sake. Find something greater than yourself to serve. Discover a mission that deserves your resources. Identify a legacy that's worth your efforts. Because when you have a purpose that transcends your personal interests, you discover that prosperity isn't something you need to pursue. It's something that naturally flows in your direction. Money obeys those who have clear direction and abandons those who live without course. Number 7. The virtue of fear of God, the invisible anchor that prevented your fall. You feel invincible when things are going well. You believe your success is the product only of your talent, your intelligence, your strategy. And gradually, without realizing it, you begin to see yourself as master of your own destiny, architect of your own luck, God of your own life. It's exactly at this moment that you're closest to falling. I need to confess something that few kings have the courage to admit. I made grave mistakes that almost destroyed everything I built. I let pride contaminate my wisdom. I allowed vanity to infect my decisions. There were moments when I thought I was too great to fall. too powerful to fail, too wise to err. And it was precisely in moments of greatest success that I faced the greatest dangers. Not from external enemies, not from economic crises, not from natural catastrophes. The danger came from within. It came from the temptation to believe I was responsible for everything I had conquered. Fear of the eternal was what saved me from self-destruction. Not blind fear, not primitive superstition, but deep reverence for a justice that transcends human understanding. The awareness that there exists a scale that never errs, a judgment that never fails, an order that governs both kings and beggars. Imagine a mountain climber at the top of a very high mountain. The view is magnificent. The sensation of conquest is intoxicating. The temptation to feel invincible is almost irresistible. But if he forgets he's tied to a rope, if he ignores that he depends on an anchor stronger than himself, a gust of wind can transform his greatest victory into his last defeat. Fear of God is that invisible anchor. It's what prevents the prosperous man from being dragged by the winds of pride. It's the spiritual brake that prevents the speed of success from becoming the cause of the accident. I knew many men who built magnificent empires and watched them crumble not from incompetence, but from arrogance. They forgot that all authority comes from above, that all prosperity is a concession, that all talent is a gift, and when you forget the source, you lose access to the supply. Pride is the most subtle poison that exists. It doesn't kill at once, it kills slowly. First, it whispers that you're special. Then, it shouts that you're indispensable. Finally, it declares that you're invincible. And when you believe this last lie, you're already dead inside, even if you're still breathing outside. But fear of the eternal isn't a force that diminishes man. It's a force that protects him. It's not a limitation that weakens him. It's wisdom that strengthens him. Because when you recognize there's something greater than you governing the universe, you stop trying to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. There's a fundamental difference between being afraid of God and fearing God. Fear paralyzes, reverence guides. Fear hides, reverence reveals. Fear enslaves, reverence liberates. Because when you fear what is just, you don't need to fear what is unjust. Fear of God taught me the difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence recognizes abilities and uses them with wisdom. Arrogance exaggerates abilities and uses them with recklessness. Confidence builds on solid foundations. Arrogance builds on quicksand. In moments when my pride threatened to destroy me, it was the remembrance that I would give account for every decision, every word, every use of the resources I received, that brought me back to reality. It was knowing there's a perfect justice observing every movement, weighing every intention, judging every action. When you develop true fear of the eternal, something liberating happens. You stop trying to impress other men because you know there's a greater judge watching. You stop seeking temporary glory because you know there's eternal approval that matters more. You stop comparing yourself with others because you know there's an absolute standard that defines true success. Fear of God is the wisdom that prevents the madness of power. It's the humility that preserves the sanity of success. It's the reverence that protects the soul from the corrosion of wealth. If you want to build prosperity that lasts generations, if you want to leave a legacy that transcends your earthly existence, cultivate fear of the eternal. Recognize that you're a steward, not owner. Servant, not master. Instrument, not source. Because in the end, the question that will define your eternal destiny won't be how much you accumulated, but how you used what you received. It won't be whether you were successful, but whether you were faithful. Fear of God is the anchor that prevents your wealth from becoming your ruin. Now you know, the 7 virtues aren't just principles for getting rich. They're walls to protect your soul when prosperity arrives, because it will arrive. And when it arrives, you'll discover who you really are inside. Imagine 2 trees planted in the same soil. One grows fast, seeks only sunlight, spreads branches in all directions. The other grows slowly, but plunges deep roots into the earth, strengthens from within before expanding outward. When the storm comes, the first falls with a crash. The second remains firm, because its strength comes from where no one can see. Which of these trees have you chosen to be? The one that impresses for a while and then crumbles, or the one that resists for generations because it built invisible foundations? Each virtue I've shared with you is a root you need to cultivate in the darkness of your soul. The truth you face when no one is looking. The silence you practice when everyone wants you to speak. The discipline you exercise when no one is demanding it. The generosity you offer without expecting applause. These aren't just strategies to multiply money. They're antidotes against the poison of prosperity. Because gold doesn't corrupt alone. It simply reveals what was already inside you from the beginning. The question that will haunt you until the last day of your life is simple, but brutal. When wealth finally reaches your hands, will you be worthy of it? Or will it be worthy of you? If these words touched something deep within you, if you feel this conversation needs to continue, subscribe to this channel. Because what we began here is only the first step of a journey that can transform not just your finances, but your essence. Do you rule the gold, or does it rule you? The answer lies in the choices you make now, in this moment, when no one but God is watching.